A legendary judge walks into court expecting another normal case, until he sees his own daughter's name on the docket. Drunk driving, a hit and run, and one chilling sentence to police. My father will make this disappear. In that moment, Judge Caprio faced a choice that could destroy either his family or his entire legacy. What happened next left the courtroom crying, the media stunned, and the whole country divided.
You know, in all my years on this bench, and we're talking over 40 years here, you think you've seen everything. But that Tuesday morning in March, when I looked at my docket and saw a name that made my heart stop, when I realized I'd have to face the hardest decision of my entire career, when I understood that everything I'd ever said about justice and equality was about to be tested in the most personal way possible, that's when I learned what it truly means to be a judge. The defendant's name was Sophia Marie Caprio, my daughter, my youngest child. And what I did in that courtroom didn't just shock everyone who was there. It started a national conversation about whether judges can truly be impartial when their own family stands accused. I remember that morning like it was yesterday, even though it was 3 years ago. I got to court early, like I always do. Been doing it for 40 years. But that morning was different. Christina, my clerk, met me at my chamber's door. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. She handed me a file without saying a word. I opened it and saw the name, Sophia Marie Caprio, age 23, charges, DUI, reckless endangerment, leaving the scene of an accident. My daughter. My baby girl who I'd raised to know right from wrong, who I'd taught about responsibility, about consequences, about how the law applies to everyone equally, who'd sat in my courtroom dozens of times watching me dispense justice, who knew better than anyone what drunk driving could do because she'd seen me sentence drunk drivers who'd killed people. Christina's voice was quiet. Judge, the protocol is clear. You have to recuse yourself. Another judge will handle it. You can't preside over your own daughter's case. I sat down heavily in my chair. What happened? Last night, around 11:45 p.m., she was driving on Atwells Avenue. Witnesses say she was going at least 60 in a 25 zone. Ran a red light at the intersection with Dean Street, hit a parked car, then she drove away. Police found her car at her apartment 20 minutes later. Front end was damaged. She refused the breathalyzer. They arrested her. My hands were shaking. Was anyone hurt? No. The parked car was empty, but Judge, Christina paused. There's more. When Officer Rodriguez arrested her, she said, my father is Judge Caprio. He'll make this go away. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My daughter, my Sophia, using my name to try to escape consequences. Everything I'd ever taught her, everything I'd stood for. She'd just thrown it all away in one moment of entitlement. Where is she now? She posted bail 2 hours ago. Her hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m. Judge, you need to recuse yourself. Let Judge Morrison handle it. Nobody would question that decision. It's the right protocol. I sat there for a long moment. I thought about all the times I'd sat on this bench and told defendants that nobody is above the law, that wealth doesn't buy justice, that political connections mean nothing, that everyone stands equal before the law. I'd said those words hundreds of times, thousands of times, but saying them is easy when it's someone else's family, when it's someone else's child. No, I said finally, I'm not recusing myself. Christina's eyes went wide. Judge, you can't be serious. She's your daughter. Every legal ethics guideline says, I know what they say, but if I recuse myself, what message does that send? That judges' families get special treatment, that we have one standard for the public and another standard for ourselves, that everything I've said about equal justice is just words. Judge Frank, nobody would blame you. Everyone would understand. She's your child. That's exactly why I can't recuse myself, because if I do, then every defendant I've ever sentenced has the right to say, you held me accountable, but you wouldn't hold your own daughter accountable. You protected your family while destroying mine. I can't do that. I won't do that. Christina looked at me with tears in her eyes. This is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. I know. At 8:45 a.m., I called my wife. We'd been married for 41 years. Joyce had been my rock through everything. She answered on the first ring. Frank, I know. Sophia called me from jail crying. She's terrified. She made a terrible mistake. She knows she messed up. Please, Frank, we need to help her. I am going to help her, Joyce. I'm going to help her by treating her exactly the same as I'd treat anyone else, because that's what real help looks like. Not protection from consequences, but facing them. Frank, she's our daughter, our baby. I can and I will, because if I don't, then everything I've stood for my entire career is a lie. I love Sophia more than anything, but I love justice more. And right now she needs justice, not favoritism. Joyce was crying. The other judges would understand if you recused yourself. Nobody expects you to sentence your own child. I expect me to, and that's what matters. I hung up and sat alone in my chambers for 10 minutes. I thought about Sophia as a little girl, her first day of school, her high school graduation, her acceptance to Providence College, all the moments of pride. And then I thought about the defendant I'd sentenced 2 months ago, Michael Torres, 24 years old, first-time DUI offender, no accident, nobody hurt. I'd given him 6 months in jail, 3 years probation, loss of license for 2 years, mandatory alcohol treatment. I'd looked him in the eye and told him that drunk driving kills people, and I wouldn't tolerate it in my courtroom. If I gave Sophia anything less, I'd be a hypocrite. If I gave her anything more to prove I wasn't showing favoritism, I'd be punishing her for being my daughter. I had to treat her exactly the same. Exactly the same. At 9 a.m., I walked into my courtroom. It was packed. Word had spread fast. The media was there, cameras, reporters, everyone wanting to see if Judge Caprio would treat his own daughter like everyone else, or if family loyalty would win. Other judges were there sitting in the gallery watching. Defense attorneys I'd faced for years, prosecutors, police officers. Everyone wanted to see what I would do. And sitting at the defense table looking small and terrified was Sophia, my baby girl. She wore a simple dress, no makeup, her eyes red from crying. Next to her sat Robert Martinez, a public defender. She hadn't even called our family attorney, probably because she was too ashamed. When Sophia saw me walk in, she started crying. Not manipulation crying, real, devastating, soul-crushing crying. The kind of crying that comes from disappointing someone you love more than anything. I sat down at the bench, looked out at the packed courtroom, took a deep breath. This court is now in session. Before we begin, I need to address something that everyone in this room is thinking about. The defendant is Sophia Caprio. She is my daughter. Many people have suggested I should recuse myself from this case, that it's inappropriate for me to preside over my own child's hearing, that the appearance of impropriety alone warrants another judge. I paused and looked directly at the cameras. I'm not recusing myself, and I'm going to tell you why. For 40 years, I've sat on this bench and told defendants that nobody is above the law, that wealth, connections, and family name mean nothing in pursuit of justice, that we're all equal before the law. If I recuse myself now, I'm saying that was all just rhetoric, that judges' families do get special treatment, that we have one standard for the public and another for ourselves. The courtroom was silent. So I'm going to do something that's going to be very difficult. I'm going to treat my daughter exactly the same way I would treat any other 23-year-old first-time DUI offender who left the scene of an accident. Not better, not worse, exactly the same. Because that's what justice means. And if I can't deliver that, then I have no business wearing this robe. I looked at Sophia. She was staring at me with devastation in her eyes. Miss Caprio, please stand. She stood, her whole body shaking. Robert Martinez stood with her. Miss Caprio, you're charged with driving under the influence of alcohol, reckless endangerment, and leaving the scene of an accident. How do you plead? Her voice was barely a whisper. Guilty, Your Honor. Speak up, please. Guilty. Louder now, her voice breaking. I'm guilty of all charges. Mr. Martinez, does your client understand her rights and the consequences of pleading guilty? Yes, Your Honor. We've discussed this thoroughly. Miss Caprio wants to take full responsibility for her actions. I looked at the file in front of me. Police report from Officer Daniel Rodriguez. Sophia had been clocked at 62 miles per hour in a 25 zone on Atwells Avenue at 11:47 p.m. Witnesses reported erratic driving, swerving between lanes, running the red light at Dean Street. She'd T-boned a parked 2018 Honda Civic, causing approximately $8,000 in damage. Then she'd fled the scene. Police found her at her apartment 20 minutes later. Her car had front-end damage consistent with the accident. She'd refused a breathalyzer test, which under Rhode Island law creates a presumption of guilt and automatic license suspension. But it was Officer Rodriguez's notes that hurt the most. Defendant stated, "My father is Judge Frank Caprio. He'll make this go away. I don't have to take your tests." Defendant appeared highly intoxicated, slurred speech, unable to walk straight line, strong odor of alcohol. I set down the file and looked at my daughter. "Miss Caprio, Officer Rodriguez's report states that when you were arrested you said, and I quote, 'My father is Judge Frank Caprio. He'll make this go away.' Did you say that?" Sophia's face crumpled. She started sobbing. "Yes, I said it. I'm so sorry, Dad. Your Honor. I was drunk and scared and I said something terrible. I didn't mean it. I know you would never. I'm so sorry." Every fiber of my being wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay, to hug her like I did when she was a little girl with a scraped knee. But I couldn't. Not here. Not now. "Miss Caprio, using my name to try to escape consequences is one of the most disappointing things I've ever heard. It shows you believed that family connections could place you above the law. Is that what you believed?" She was crying so hard she could barely speak. "No, I don't know. I was drunk and terrified and I said the first thing that came to my mind. I wasn't thinking. I know better. You raised me better. I'm so ashamed." "You should be ashamed, not just of the drunk driving, but of thinking that being my daughter gave you special privileges." I turned to the prosecutor, Jennifer Chen. "Miss Chen, what is the state's recommendation?" Jennifer stood. I'd worked with her for 5 years. She was tough, fair, and she knew this was the hardest moment of my career. "Your Honor, the state recommends the following: 6 months in the Rhode Island Adult Correctional Institutions, 3 years probation, license suspension for 2 years, mandatory alcohol treatment, and $8,000 restitution for the damaged vehicle. This is consistent with the sentence you've imposed on similar first-time DUI offenders who left the scene of an accident." 6 months in jail, my daughter in jail, for 6 months. I looked at Robert Martinez. "Mr. Martinez, your recommendation?" "Your Honor, Miss Caprio has no criminal record. She's a college graduate working as a teacher. She's deeply remorseful. We ask for probation, community service, alcohol treatment, and restitution. Incarceration would destroy her teaching career and serve no rehabilitative purpose." It was a good argument, a fair argument, and if Sophia weren't my daughter, if she were just another defendant, I would have... What? What would I have done? 2 months ago, Michael Torres, 24 years old, first-time offender, no accident, 6 months jail. 3 weeks ago, Sarah Richardson, 25 years old, first-time offender, hit a parked car but didn't flee, 4 months jail. 5 months ago, David Chen, 22 years old, first-time offender, fled the scene, 8 months jail. The pattern was clear. When defendants left the scene, I went harder on them. Because leaving the scene shows consciousness of guilt, shows cowardice, shows putting yourself above responsibility to others. "Miss Caprio," I said, "you drove drunk. You hit someone's car. And then you fled. Do you understand how serious that is?" "Yes, Your Honor." She was barely holding it together. "If someone had been in that car, you could have killed them. If someone had been crossing the street when you ran that red light, you could have killed them. Drunk driving doesn't just risk your life, it risks everyone around you. Do you understand that?" "Yes, Your Honor, I understand. I'm so sorry. Who did you learn that from, about drunk driving being serious?" She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "From you. You taught me. You've told me since I was a little girl. You showed me the photos of accidents. You made me sit in the courtroom when you sentenced drunk drivers. You taught me that drunk driving kills people. And you did it anyway." "Yes." Her voice was just a whisper. "I did it anyway." "Why?" "I don't know. I was out with friends. I'd had too much to drink. They offered to call me an Uber, but I thought I was fine. I thought I could make it home. I was wrong. I'm so sorry." I looked out at the packed courtroom, at the cameras, at my fellow judges watching, at the prosecutors and defense attorneys who'd worked in my courtroom for years. They were all waiting to see what I would do. "Miss Caprio, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen carefully. I love you more than anything in this world. You're my daughter, my youngest child. I would give my life for you without hesitation. But I can't give you special treatment. I can't protect you from the consequences of your actions. Because if I do, then everything I've stood for my entire career becomes meaningless." Sophia was sobbing. So was my wife in the gallery. So were half the people in the courtroom. 2 months ago, I sentenced Michael Torres to 6 months in jail for his first DUI. 3 weeks ago, I gave Sarah Richardson 4 months for a DUI with an accident. 5 months ago, David Chen got 8 months for a DUI where he left the scene. You committed DUI, hit a parked car, and left the scene. Under my own precedent, you deserve somewhere between 4 and 8 months. Sophia's legs gave out. Robert Martinez had to hold her up. But I'm also taking into account that you pleaded guilty immediately. You didn't try to fight the charges. You took full responsibility. That shows genuine remorse and deserves consideration. I looked at Jennifer Chen. Ms. Chen, in your experience, have I given credit for immediate guilty pleas in DUI cases? Yes, Your Honor. You typically reduce the sentence by 1 to 2 months when defendants plead guilty immediately and show genuine remorse. I nodded. I picked up my gavel. This was it. The moment that would define my career, that would show whether I truly believed in equal justice or whether it was all just words. "Sophia Marie Caprio," I said, my voice steady despite my breaking heart, "I hereby sentence you to 4 months in the Rhode Island Adult Correctional Institutions, to be followed by 3 years of supervised probation. Your driver's license is suspended for 2 years. You will complete mandatory alcohol treatment. You will pay $8,000 in restitution to the owner of the vehicle you damaged. And you will complete 200 hours of community service speaking to high school students about the dangers of drunk driving." The courtroom erupted. Reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were flashing. Sophia collapsed into her chair, sobbing. "Additionally," I continued, "I want to say something to everyone watching. My daughter made a terrible mistake. She drove drunk. She could have killed someone. She fled the scene. She tried to use my name to escape consequences. All of that is unforgivable. But she's also taking responsibility. She pleaded guilty. She's accepting her punishment. And I'm sentencing her to 4 months in jail not because she's my daughter, but despite the fact that she's my daughter. Because in America, we're all supposed to be equal before the law. And if judges' children get special treatment, then we don't have a justice system. We have an aristocracy." I banged the gavel. Court is adjourned.
Now comes the hardest part of all. Sentencing his own daughter. Judge Caprio starts comparing Sophia's case to past DUI rulings to stay fair and consistent. He can't protect her, but he also can't punish her extra just to satisfy the public. The entire courtroom is waiting to see if justice truly stays equal here.
I stood up and walked off the bench without looking at Sophia. If I'd looked at her, I would have broken down. And I couldn't do that. Not there, not then. In my chambers, I closed the door and sat in my chair, and for the first time in 40 years of being a judge, I put my head down on my desk and cried. I cried for my daughter who was going to jail. I cried for the pain I knew my wife was feeling. I cried for the hardest decision I'd ever made. But I also cried with relief, because I'd done the right thing, even though it hurt, even though it destroyed me. I'd done the right thing. That afternoon, the verdict went viral. Judge Caprio sentenced his own daughter to jail was the headline everywhere. Social media exploded. Some people praised me for treating my daughter the same as everyone else. Some people attacked me for being heartless, for choosing my career over my child. The legal community was divided. Some called it the strongest statement about judicial impartiality in modern history. Others said I should have recused myself. But you know what the most common reaction was? From regular people, from defendants I'd sentenced over the years, from families of drunk driving victims. They said, "Finally, a judge who actually believes in equal justice, who doesn't protect his own family, who holds himself to the same standard as everyone else." Sophia served 4 months at the women's division of the ACI. I visited her every week, not as a judge but as her father. We cried together. We talked about her addiction issues that she'd been hiding. We talked about responsibility and consequences. And slowly, over those 4 months, I watched my daughter grow up, really grow up. She took the alcohol treatment seriously. She got sober. She stayed sober. When she was released, she completed her probation without incident. She did her community service, speaking to high school students. And you know what she told them? She showed them a picture of me on the bench, sentencing her to jail. And she said, "That's my father. And he loved me enough to hold me accountable. He loved me enough to not protect me from my mistakes. He loved me enough to treat me exactly the same as everyone else. That's real love. Not the love that enables and protects, but the love that says, I believe in you enough to let you face consequences and become better." 3 years later, Sophia is still sober. She's a teacher at a middle school. She runs a program for students struggling with alcohol. She speaks at DUI victim impact panels. She's become an advocate for equal justice and accountability. And 6 months ago, she came to my chambers after court. We sat together, just father and daughter, and she said, "Dad, I need to thank you. What you did that day was the hardest thing you've ever done. I know it destroyed you. I know Mom was furious at you for weeks. I know you questioned yourself every day. But you saved my life. If you'd protected me, if you'd given me probation or let another judge go easy on me, I never would have gotten sober. I never would have faced my addiction. I would have kept drinking until I killed someone or killed myself. You loved me enough to let me fall, and that saved me." We both cried. But this time they were tears of healing, of understanding, of a relationship that had been broken and rebuilt stronger. If this story moved you, I need you to understand something. What I did wasn't heroic. It was just doing my job. Treating my daughter the same as everyone else shouldn't be remarkable. It should be expected. But we live in a world where powerful people protect their families, where judges' children get special treatment, where there's one justice system for the connected and another for everyone else. I'm not a hero. I'm just a judge who meant what he said about equal justice. And if sharing this story makes one other person in power hold their own family accountable, if it makes one other judge refuse to give special treatment, if it shows one person that real love sometimes means letting people face consequences, then maybe, just maybe, Sophia's pain and my pain weren't for nothing. 3 years ago, I sentenced my daughter to 4 months in jail for drunk driving. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. It broke my heart. It tested my marriage. It made me question everything. But it was also the most important thing I've ever done, because it proved that equal justice isn't just something I talk about. It's something I live, even when it costs me everything. That's not just a verdict. That's a promise to every person who's ever stood in my courtroom that I meant every word I ever said about justice. I'm Frank Caprio. My daughter went to jail, and I'm proud of her, and I'm proud of what I did. Because sometimes the best judgment is not in the book, and it's not in your heart. Sometimes the best judgment is in having the courage to treat the people you love the same as everyone else. That's what justice means. That's what equality means. That's what being a judge means. If you believe in equal justice, if you believe that nobody should be above the law, if you believe that judges should hold themselves to the same standard as everyone else, subscribe to this channel, share this video, tell people that accountability matters, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Court adjourned.
This case became a powerful lesson about justice, family, and accountability. Sophia served her sentence, got sober, and later admitted the punishment saved her life. Judge Caprio proved that real equality means holding your own family accountable too. If this story shocked you, like, share, comment your opinion, and subscribe for more courtroom drama.